Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1072, and today's date is September 11th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, since the Great Recession of 2008, where the central bankers decided to step in and help us all out, we can see at this point that they really haven't helped the economy at all. I mean, think about it. In 2008, we had the bailouts, we had quantitative easing, and what did we get from all this? Well, we got economic stagnation, we got creation of low-quality jobs, we see concentration of wealth up to the 1% to the elite, and we're seeing that 8 years later, right now the elites, they're terrified. The central bankers are terrified that this entire game is ending. I mean, if you look at the architects like Ben Bernanke, Alan Greenspan, Larry Summers, and others, they've all come out again trying to switch the narrative that they're not responsible for any of this. It's actually the people. That's the problem. It's the governments. Those are the individuals that created all this. But the central bankers, we had nothing to do with this. And we can see right now that Draghi, Yellen, and all the others, they're trying to pass the blame onto Congress. It's all Congress's fault. It's Congress who is listening to the people. It is their fault that the economy is doing what it is doing right now. And you have to remember, the president, the Fed, they've been out there continually telling us that the economy is improving, Europe is improving, the U.S. is improving. And now we see something different happening, where they're trying to change the story and try to place blame on everyone else but themselves. And we can see right now that in the last 8 years, central planning hasn't worked. The global central banks have spent around $14 trillion. They've maintained zero or negative interest rates. And we can see what has happened since. Absolutely nothing. What they're talking about now is more quantitative easing. They're talking about more countries going into negative interest rates. Their system is done. Actually, Ron Paul, there's a video out with Ron Paul talking about martial law. And he's not talking about martial law in the way we think of it. He's talking about financial martial law. And if you want to see that video, I do have it on Sentinel Alerts. If you just go to x22report.com, up top, you'll see Sentinel Alerts. Just click on today's alerts, and it will bring you right to that video. Just, you might have to scroll down a little bit because alerts continually come in. So you'll see that video and you can watch it there. But he's talking about financial martial law, where he sees huge tax increases, a wealth tax, the government going after pensions. And we're already seeing a wealth tax in different countries like India, where everyone has to gather up their entire wealth, and then there's a percentage on their wealth each year. And we know the IMF has been talking about a wealth tax on the entire private Western Central Bank countries, where the people, and this is not just for the wealthy, this is going to be for everyone, where they're going to have to add up their entire wealth and give a percentage. Actually, Greece is moving in that direction right now. He's also talking about the government going after pensions. And he said most Americans are going to be really shocked when the government talks about retroactive taxes and goes back in time and says we need to place taxes in the past, bring them forward, and now you owe this amount of money. And he says this is a form of financial martial law. And why are they doing this right now? Because they have run out of ammunition right now. We can see that the Fed, if they increase the interest rates like they've been talking about, I've said this in the past in other reports, this is a sign that they're ready to bring down the entire system. Now people saying, well, if they raise the interest rates, you mean that same day the entire market and everything is going to crash? No. If they do that, they're going to be to blame. What they're going to do is they're going to bring up the interest rates, and a month or two later, all of a sudden, tied with another event, everything will come crashing down. Now, they did the first increase of interest rates a couple months ago, almost a year ago now, and they might be getting ready now to increase it once again. And this would be the signal. So what they're going to do is they're going to say the economy is strong enough, let's increase the interest rates. Now, other countries, other central banks, they're in the negative territory. And we know that raising the interest rates, it's not going to help the situation. It's going to make the situation even worse. And they know this. And what they'll do is, once they raise the interest rates, maybe a month or two later, with this event that's going to occur, they will say, we were improving, because they'll manipulate the improvement, because in the short period of time, we'll see a little jump and things will start to improve, but things will start to slide, and this is where they're going to have the problem. And this is why they're going to need the event. And once the event happens, we already know from the central banks, they're talking about more QE, because they had a report that came out that said, listen, if there's an economic shock, we're going to have to increase quantitative easing up to maybe 4 trillion, which I think it's going to be much, much more than that. And then once this event occurs, QE starts, they're going to say, listen, we need to go deep into negative territory with the interest rates. And we're going to see central banks around the world bring it down even further. And this will be the beginning of this entire system crashing, because you have to remember, they've been telling us all along that the economy has been improving. But if we look at the facts, like the Institute of Supply Management, the ISM Manufacturing Report, it's plunged by 49.4 in August from 52.6 in July. We see the ISM Non-Manufacturing Report went from 55.5 to 51.4, the slowest growth since February of 2010. We see the August non-farm payrolls came in well below the 151,000 jobs. We see that construction, manufacturing, losing jobs like crazy. Construction spending is slowing. We're seeing delinquencies in auto loans rising. We're seeing corporate defaults rising. These are not the signs of a roaring economy. These are signs of an economy that is contracting, that is falling apart, that's imploding. So we can see they're already preparing and getting ready for this. Now we see out in North Korea allegedly had this nuclear test. And we see that Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, he's out there, he condemns the North Korean nuclear test. And of course, China does too, because they're trying to step away from the situation. And they don't want to be involved with North Korea, because we can see the United States government central bankers are trying to provoke North Korea into doing something. And they want to place more and more sanctions on North Korea to try to squeeze them. And we can see that Sergei Lavrov is out there saying, listen, sanctions don't work. There has to be a more creative way of dealing with North Korea. Maybe we should have talks with them. Maybe we should approach them and discuss what's going on. But you have to remember, the United States government central bankers, when North Korea proposed this, the United States says there's going to be no talks. We're not talking. We're bringing in military assets into South Korea. We're bringing in the THAAD missile system. We're not talking. There's no negotiation. The only time the United States government central bankers seem to negotiate with countries or situations is when they're on the losing end. When they see, we have a problem here. We better calm this down, and we better have a discussion to reinforce our troops, to reinforce our military assets. And that's what we always see. And we see North Korea, an official from North Korea came out and said, listen, North Korea should be recognized right now as a legitimate nuclear weapon holding country. And of course, the United States doesn't want to do this, because the United States wants to go into North Korea and actually have a regime change or provoke war in this country. And they don't like to go into countries where they have nuclear weapons. That's not really their modus operandi. They don't like to do that. And we can see at this point that the United States government central bankers are going to continually push war all around the globe. Out in Libya, we see that the unity government is moving in on all the oil ports. They're trying to control all of those regions. And of course, what they're really trying to do here in this country is they're trying to capture the oil fields, the oil ports. They're trying to maintain control of the oil. They don't care about the people. And we can see right now that there are 3 different governments inside of Libya. One is the unity government, which the people didn't even vote for. They didn't even want. The United States, the UN, the coalition forces decided what government the people are going to have. And we can see this is the battle right now. The battle is against the central bankers and the people and what they really want in this country. While this is going on, the central bankers are trying to capture all the assets of the country. And the assets, that is the oil. And that's what they've been trying to do. We see out in Aleppo in Syria, the last remaining senior medic was killed by the U.S.-backed rebels. And we can see right now that the U.S. and Russia decided to calm the situation down, to have a ceasefire. Is this permanent peace? Well, no, we've seen this fail time and time again. And parts of the deal, they have remained secret. Because you have to remember everything leading up to this. Al-Nusra and the moderate rebels were intertwined. They were as one. Russia kept on saying, well, Al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda, they are a terrorist group. You need to separate them. And of course, the United States government central bankers, they stalled and stalled and stalled. And eventually, Russia decided, and Syria decided, you know what, we're going to be hitting the terrorists. And this is the U.S.'s problem because they stalled for all of these months because they really didn't want to do it. But what they've seen in Syria is that they were losing. Syria, Russia, they've been pushing the Islamic State out of Syria, coming after Al-Qaeda, after Al-Nusra. And then we had a name change. And then all of a sudden, the U.S. and the moderate rebels and their terrorist groups, which are all one and the same, they decided to have a name change and separate themselves from Al-Qaeda. And this way, they're no longer on the UN terrorist list. And they thought, oh, this will be it. Listen, you can't bomb them because they're not on the UN terrorist list. But Sergei Lavrov from Russia said, it doesn't matter how many times you change your name. You are the same group. You are terrorists. So the U.S. went in and said, listen, we need to buy some time here. We can't have them destroy the terrorist groups, the moderate rebels, because we're losing in Aleppo and we're losing our stance right now. So every time the U.S. loses, then they need some time. They push a ceasefire deal, and this is exactly what's happening. Now, parts of it are secret. Most likely, it has to do with the terrorist groups and what Russia is going to do with them. And they didn't want this information coming out because, of course, this would be damaging to the U.S. And I see this was part of the deal. And we can see right now that this most likely is a stall tactic by the U.S. to bring in more military assets, to bring in more troops, to have Turkey position itself. And will this last? Most likely not, because their goal, again, is always, let's get Assad, then move into Iran. That has been the goal from the beginning. Now, the Syrian government is saying they're going to be supporting the ceasefire. And we can see the U.S. came out and they told their rebels that, listen, if you're attacked, you're allowed to use self-defense. So, of course, every time the moderate rebels, the terrorist groups attack, they're going to say it's in self-defense. And this is what they've always done in the past. And we can see right now they're going to be doing it in the future. And I don't think these ceasefire talks are going to work out because the United States government central bankers, they don't give up. We saw what happened before when there was a ceasefire. They brought in thousands upon thousands of more terrorists into this region. Right now we have Turkey inside of Syria carving out a certain area for a safe zone, an exclusive zone. And we can see this is all part of their plan. And right now, this ceasefire is a complete stall tactic. Now, very interestingly, we know there's going to be this great battle in Mosul and to get rid of the Islamic State, of course. But what's very interesting about this is that the United States is continually having more combat-ready Marines come into Iraq. And they're planning on this invasion during the election period, the end of October going into November. Now, what does this really mean? Because this is a very large-scale offensive with U.S. troops inside of Iraq. Will they say an event has occurred? Will something happen during this period? Because it's very interesting that they're going to be doing it at the same exact time as the elections are going on. Because we know with these elections, if the elite do not get the person they want in office, they will postpone. And there's many different ways they can postpone this. It could be a national emergency. It could be something with the Zika virus. It could be the health of one of the candidates, because we've seen that Clinton, apparently she has some type of health problems today at the 9/11 memorial. She kind of passed out and they had to rush her off. They can say we can postpone it with that. There could be an economic problem in the country. There can be an event that can occur. So when we're looking at the situation, they have been looking at every angle, making sure that they're prepared to postpone this election if it doesn't go the way they want. And we have to remember, things are rapidly deteriorating, falling apart all at the same time. The Middle East crisis, the petrodollar in the Middle East, falling apart. We see the economy in Europe, in Australia, Canada, the United States, UK, rapidly deteriorating. The housing market is falling apart. The retail market is falling apart. Manufacturing. And then we have the manipulated unemployment GDP and the fake stock market. And we can see that this is one gigantic disaster. And they're continually out there telling us if there's an economic shock, if there's a problem, this is what we're going to do. So they're already building up the propaganda, the idea that there's something coming, because they know there is. And we can see it's just a matter of time before this whole thing just collapses. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.